I always see people asking me if a deal they found is worth it or not, and one of their biggest justifications for why they think it has lots of potential is often because it's something along the lines of, it's one of four, it's one of two, it's one of one. And I used to think the same for several years until I figured out that the amount of a certain unusual hat in existence doesn't really matter over 95% of the time, yet many traders are caught up in this misconception and struggle to make profit. And once I stopped really looking at the supply of unusuals, I started to make a lot more profit, and nowadays I basically can tell how good a deal is in about 5 seconds by just knowing what to look for. So let me explain to you how unusual supply really works, coming from a top 50 TF2 trader of all time who has been in this space for over 8 years. Number 1. Generic effects don't matter. Let's make this clear first. Almost every unusual hat effect coming from Generation 1, 2, and 3, such as Burning Flame, Stormy Storm, and Aces High, have thousands in supply spread across all hats. So therefore, if we had a more expensive Burning Flames hat which was one of one, but it had roughly the same aesthetic appeal as another cheaper Burning Flames hat with 20 in supply, does that really justify to your potential buyers that they should pay more for one hat that is rarer rather than saving money and getting the same visual appeal in their loadout? I'm telling you that most of the time, TF2 players are most likely to choose the unusual hat with the best aesthetic appeal for value in accordance with their budget. They do not care about supply. So when an unusual effect that is abundant across hundreds of hats is rare on just one, the demand for that particular hat doesn't increase and might actually decrease because the price is so high due to low supply, and it therefore increases its expected time to sell for full price. And if unusual supply doesn't matter on generation 1, 2, and 3, when does it actually matter? Well, let's move on to number 2, Halloweens and limited effects. These two categories of unusual effects are when low supply actually matters. This is because 1, these types of unusual effects are already scarce across the entire market, and 2, these unusual effects are not unboxable anymore, making them very appealing to pretty much every TF2 player, trader, and investor alike. So when it comes to selling these types of unusuals with low supply, it's much more reasonable to ask for a higher price since they will stay rare forever, and most of these unusual effects are highly aesthetic and unique. It's common to see one of one limited unusuals to be sold for extremely high amounts to collectors on backpack.tf, but it's important to note that the cutoff point of supply, which gets to around more than 5 in supply. For example, despite the Air Dog looking not horrible and possessing many aesthetic effects, people mass unbox the Mayflower case to try and get an unusual Herald's Helm or an unusual Gauzed Gaze, which are quick switch miss, and this causes the unusual Air Dog to have very high supply even on limited effects, resulting in poor selling opportunities and high competition. And in addition to low supply, it has to be aesthetic. Does the hat and effect look good, or else no one is going to be interested in sending you an offer just because it's rare. Just like how we discussed about rare generic effects being expensive. So in conclusion, remember that low unusual supply really only works on Halloween unusuals and limited unusuals since they are already rare and not unboxable anymore, and it works best when there are less than 5 in supply. But for any other unusual that is not a limited unusual or a Halloween unusual, let's talk about how the different unusual supply ranges will influence their sellability and profitability, and please do take the numbers with a grain of salt. Number 3, 1 to 10 in existence. As I said before, the biggest flaw is that more can be unboxed in the future, and most effects already have a high supply spread across various hats. When talking about an unusual with low supply that isn't limited, this is often resulting in a more inflated price due to the natural law of supply and demand. This makes it more difficult to sell and risky since you're investing so much capital into something that could just sit there with no offers, but you do experience the best profit margin if it sells. Naturally, with low supply, there will be low competition and a low amount of past sales, letting you dictate the price of what you wanted to sell it at, but then it's in the hands of the buyer whether to purchase it from you or to choose something else from someone else. Number 4, 10 to 50 in existence. In this range, everything is in balance. There should be a reasonable amount of past sales, a modest profit margin percentage, and an expected number of competition when competing against other sellers. So it's in this range where you should be choosing favorable markets to sell your unusuals in order to yield the best profit in the shortest period of time. Number 5, 50 plus in existence. This is when I would call unusual supply high, and it's common for third gen unusuals and case hats with their respective case effects, such as the Starstorm Slumber Cranial Chacarodon. And the thing is, these unusuals often have many sellers you must compete with and a small profit margin as a result. However, they often sell very fast since they are so cheap and aesthetic. It seems that high supply unusuals in TF2 also have high demand, so it's an excellent way to quick buy and quick sell for fast but small profit. And that's all I have to say for explaining how unusual supply works in TF2. Remember to check out the school community and free Discord server in the top of the description. Make sure to like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave a comment regarding your experience with the supply of unusuals, and I'll catch you next time. See ya!